One. And I'm here with current mental health clinician for Rutgers Athletics, Alex Gamble. Alex, my friend, first off, it's great to see you, which we were talking before. Have not seen each other in a very long time. And for people at home, Alex and I are very good friends. We go too far back for me to reveal because it will make us seem very old. But it's just great to have you on the show today, my friend. How's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's nice to see your face.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. It's nice to see your face. Nice to chit chat with you. And, obviously, we're going to dive into your awesome career you've got. Really excited to just chit chat about what's going on in your life and your career and whatnot. But I want to first ask because you are in the mental health field. So a lot of it,
Yeah,
seeing patients, seeing athletes and whatnot. I'm
right.
sure last year was a very challenging year, as it was for everybody, but especially for people who are needing your services, if you will. So I want to hear from you. How has it been being able to interact with athletes in person this year as opposed to last year? But then also, what was that like for you last year?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. It was tough because I think, what sort of struck me was like I was dealing with my own shit. You know what I mean? Like just my own stuff, like I was in grad school, sort of my second year, just finishing it out. I was coaching, I was still doing a lot of other things. And ironically, even with the world sort of on pause, it felt like I was busier than ever. Because you set up more meetings, you're on your computer all day, you're sitting. So there was so much going on with, politically, the social unrest, the racial unrest, the mental health crisis, COVID. So it was really tough because like a lot of what I did was virtual. So there's a lot of sitting in front of a screen, which can be draining, as I'm sure you know, just being behind a screen, talking to people, listening. So now, like being fully in person, it's made the world of a difference. Like especially with what I'm doing, like it's great to be able to see people, and like see their expression, see what's going on, like feel that energy that I feel like you don't get fully when you're behind a screen. And then on top of that, just being in the college athletic environment, like games are in person. So it's like I'm going to a basketball game later tonight. Looking forward to that. Like you go to football games, all these other sports too, and that's really added to a whole new element of just working in this field, but also being in a college environment. Now that you and I are both washed up, we can't play anymore. It's nice to sort of be around that space. So yeah, it's been great.
Well, I know I'm washed up. I don't know about you.
I'm
I'm
definitely
really, no, I'm really washed up. Like, I mean, I am like, I'm on the bank of the beach at this point. Okay. It's bad.
I'm right there with you.
I'm
I'm right
bad.
there with
I'm really bad. But I'm glad you mentioned about your playing career because we'll get back into your career, what you're doing now. But I want to get into your athletic career. You've had a very interesting journey. You played at University of Rochester, a very decorated Division III school. What made you attend Rochester, but then also as a Division III athlete who now works in a Division I environment? What's that kind
you.
of like? What and what kind of differences have you noticed from how things were done at Rochester versus how things are done at Rutgers?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because like I always mix up the two. It's like I traded in the yellow R for the red R. So it's like it's funny sort of going from Rochester to Rutgers. Like I think even family doesn't like they forget like how's work going at Rochester? It's like no mom, like I work at Rutgers now. So it's funny. But yeah, choosing Rochester, it sounds cliche, but it was sort of this moment where like I was on campus, saw the gym, got to meet people, and it just felt like the right place. So I sort of had that like aha moment, which sounds super cheesy, but for me it was real. And then also just like you said, it was high level basketball. Wasn't able to make it Division I, but it was still cool playing high level Division III. Like getting to travel to games, fly to games, playing other schools all over the country. Was really cool, amazing experience. And then academically, I had no idea what I was going to study, um, and so it had this open curriculum where I could do whatever I wanted, and stay away from math and science as much as possible, which is what I was able to do. And so yeah, I can't remember the last part of that, but oh, the difference between D3 playing at Rochester to then being at Rutgers, it's a lot of its resources, the size, the scale. It's like going to a game now. It's like there's thousands and thousands of people. Coaches are getting paid a shit ton of money. It's a lot of high stakes, and they're almost public figures. So especially with social media, it's like these guys have a huge following, and so have to deal with a lot more pressure. So I feel like all of it's helps, because I wasn't able to play at this level. But having been around, student athletes and seen it at the D3 level, and sort of transferring and, applying the same skills and things that I learned then into this environment has made it, all the more valuable. I think made for a better transition too.
Now, was there a moment when you first started at Rutgers when you were like, whoa, this is bigger than I probably would have expected? I mean, was there that kind of like, this is insane right now?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. So I remember my first day going out because I was commuting from the city, from New York City and Manhattan, out to Jersey. And this was sort of early on. So I did do some stuff in person. Like I said, I did a lot of things virtually, remotely, but a lot of stuff in person as well. And I remember, I had to take the subway to Penn Station, then Penn Station out to New Brunswick, which was another like hour 15 or so hour, and then I didn't have a car and no buses were running because of COVID. And so I walked from the train station to the campus, and so it took me about an hour long walk, and that was just to get to one athletic department, one athletic facility. And so me, I'm thinking like, well, it can't be that big, there can't be that many places, but it's like you're going from the football stadium across campus to then the athletic center that has like basketball and gymnastics and volleyball, and then going to the grad school. And it's like, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you could be walking for hours. And so eventually, I started meeting people and getting better connected, and people were nice enough to give me rides and all of that. So it didn't last for long, but that first day was tough when I had a deep ass walk all the way there, to get out to campus. So
An hour walk. That's a long, long
it's
journey.
huge. I was like, yeah, this isn't Rochester. I'd wake up in Rochester, you go everywhere you need in 10 minutes. So that I think that was the moment that it clicked.
That's how it was at Chatham, my friend. We didn't even have 10 minutes. It would take us 2 minutes. I mean, everything is an
Right
earshot
there.
away. Yeah, it's crazy. And I'm sure that was probably a very, like I said, an eye-opening experience for you to witness and just be like, wow, this is a totally different world from what I'm coming from. I do want to still stay at Rochester before we really, really
Yeah.
dive into what you're doing now, because you went to
Yeah.
the Elite Eight with your team. And I don't know if you knew I was going to ask you that or not, but I have to ask, and I know you and I have talked about it, but I want you to share with the people, my friend, what in the world was that like? What was that like experiencing an Elite Eight run? But again, this is not like how everyone thinks of it as, at the NCAA one, at Division One level, whatever, whatever. It still probably got to be a crazy experience for you, right?
Yeah, no, it was wild. I mean, that was a really special time. We had a really talented team, a lot of upperclassmen who were really, really good. And so it was amazing. Just we were playing in front of a lot of different people, going to different places, getting to travel to games, seeing different parts of the country too, and just seeing like different towns. Like we would play in like we ended up playing in Marietta, Ohio. And it's like all it was like Division 3 basketball. Like that was what this town lived for. Like stores were closed down. We were trying to get food, and it was like all these places were closed before the game. So like the whole town showed up. But it was great because we got to like play it in front of our own fans at home, and then just keep marching along. And it was also challenging mentally, not just physically, but I think mentally everyone was sort of like, wow, like this is amazing. We're also pretty burnt out at times. Like, you're around the same guys all the time. You have a lot of different stuff going. You got school on top of it, exams, different things like that. But it was a lot of fun. It feels like yesterday and like forever ago at the same time. But I think what made it the most enjoyable was just the people I got to play with and be on the court with. So even though I wasn't a major contributor on the court at that time in terms of my role on the team, it was nice to be able to feel like in practices and workouts, like just encouraging your teammates, just trying to be the best at my role at that time, which wasn't necessarily on the court. It was just sort of behind the scenes, trying to be in my teammates' ear, and so I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when you were going through that. I remember talking with you and just hearing
Yeah.
kind of the step by step of, oh, we just won again, we just won again. I think I remember one time I texted you and you didn't answer. I was like, oh, I think they lost, and then I looked up the schedule and I was like, oh, they actually won. He's probably just celebrating. So I mean, that's such a cool thing, right? And I think the thing is that we all kind of like to think of, oh, an Elite Eight run, NCAA Division One tournament kind of thing, and the big time show, if you will, but no matter what the scale is, I mean, that's still the top and the biggest, podium that you can really stand on is the NCAA tournament at the Division One, Division Two, or Division Three level. So you got to experience the same thing that guys at University of Houston did this past year, and Baylor, and wherever else. So you got to have a very
Yeah.
unique experience. But now we're going to segue into what you're getting into now, and I want to first open it up with what made you want to get into mental health? I mean, what was kind of that moment, or what kind of instance did you have where you said, "I wanna get into mental health"?
Yeah, that's another tough question. I think a lot of it, both my parents are social workers, so I sort of had that background going into it, being around it, and really just, I guess, a value of like giving back to others, helping other people was instilled in me, I think, from a pretty young age. Just being around them and seeing what they did and seeing the satisfaction and fulfillment they got out of it. But in college, like I didn't really go into it planning to do that. So I sort of stumbled into my majors. I studied psychology, anthropology, and religion. So I was all over the place then. Um, and I don't know, like honestly, I don't think I ever had it fully mapped out. Like I always thought about it, and knew I wanted to stick around sports, and always saw mental health as being important. So whether it was stuff that I was going through or seeing teammates go through or friends or other family, and it was just never really talked about very openly. Um, and so I think especially being an athlete, being a black athlete too, like you were sort of around this and it's very stigmatized and people wouldn't talk about feelings or what was going on with them. It was all about, the culture of sports, like you got to get over it when you're on between the lines, like, you got to be on top of it. And so I think just going to grad school was sort of that next step, and still trying to figure out exactly where I was going with it, but knew that I was passionate about it. Knew it was a space I wanted to get into, and I've also been very lucky and fortunate to have people sort of encouraging me and supporting me, because the field isn't super diverse, which is another reason why I felt like I wanted to get into the space even more.
Well, I think that you are getting into it for all the right reasons, right? And I think that's another important thing is getting into something not just because, you're running out of time or you don't know what you want to do, but because you feel like it is the right thing for you. And this is the right thing for you, my friend. I mean, I've told you this for a long time. You just have a natural way of being able to talk someone through whatever they're dealing with. I am curious to also hear what has kind of been the biggest or maybe the most impactful thing that you've learned during your mental health career and just being in this new environment that you've kind of started to get yourself into. What's been that big emphasizing or big highlighted point that you've learned so far?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and it's becoming more normalized lately, which is great. Like a lot of athletes, I mean, you have Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, um, I mean, DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Love, like more commonly known people too, talking about that a while back. But a lot of more athletes are starting to step forward and talk about it. In college sports, even there's a lot more mental health initiatives. You're seeing backing from different celebrities too. So I think it's a cool time to be in this space because there aren't the same barriers and stigma that there was before. Not to say that they're gone because it's still extremely prevalent. Um, but I'd say the biggest thing I've learned is like, we're all going through something. Uh, and, it's sort of a commonly used phrase, but like everyone has stuff going on. Like there's not a person in the world, myself included, who has it all figured out. And I think that's the beautiful thing. It's like we're all sort of finding our way and making sense of things and trying to work our way through life. And I think that's something that's been really impactful for me just so far early on in the journey.
Now, what is your job typically like? I mean, obviously, without giving too many details out, but what is kind of the day to day of Alex Gamble, or what would you say is kind of entailed in your job with dealing with athletes, and then maybe even dealing with coaches? I mean, like, what is that in and out, or the ins and outs of your job like?
Yeah, it's awesome because every day is different, and you get a lot of autonomy and freedom. But it's not a typical 9 to 5, and I love that. Like some days, you might not be doing a ton of stuff until 10 a.m. or noon, or maybe even later, and you might be staying until 9 or 10, going to a game or talking to people, or vice versa. You might have a really early morning at 6 or 7 and be going until 5, and then you know what I mean. Like everything is different. But for me, so I'm also a research assistant in the grad school of psychology at Rutgers. So it sort of looks like doing research, sort of independently or with small groups of people, with my supervisor, my boss as well, who's amazing. And then I might see 2 or 3 athletes individually. Some of it's just like mental health, counseling and therapy, just whatever's going on for them. Some of it might be performance based or mental skills. So using a lot of mindfulness in sports, or visualization, imagery, all of those things. Just trying to improve the mental aspect of the game. But then also like working with the team and doing like a team session, or gosh, there's so many different, going to a practice, talking to coaches. Like I love that you get to do so many different things and you're constantly learning. So I learn a ton from the people I work with, and also the people that I'm working uh, with in terms of the athletes too. So not just the sports psychologists and other people on staff, but also from learning from coaches. I'm learning from the athletes I work with, learning how the systems work. So it's really amazing. Like every day looks different. There's always something new. And it's never boring. There's always stuff happening. So I'm really, really fortunate about that.
I think what's great about how mental health has started to really come about more and more is people starting to see that there is a relation to mental health and your physical performance. There is a direct correlation to it, and there's scientific evidence that supports that. How have
Yeah.
you noticed, or how have you maybe gauged how much mental health can impact somebody's, a physical, playing on the field, playing on the court, whatever? I mean, how much can it affect that?
Oh yeah. No, I think that's the thing that, sometimes people just come in with, it's just a performance issue, or, I feel like sometimes things are rooted like physically, like an ailment, or sometimes it's not necessarily something you can point to and be like, this hurts or this is broken. But just mentally, I mean, it's all connected. So we carry so much weight, whatever that is. And I think we carry that with us wherever we're going. So I think there is a lot of interconnection between like mentally how people are doing, physically how they're performing. And once you start to sort of, get into it a little bit more and see how things are working, to see how people are thinking about things, you start to notice like, okay, like this could be affecting or impacting this area of your performance or your focus or your attention, or your sleeping habits, or there's so much that goes into performance, that affects people mentally. So it's definitely very much bound within each other.
Well, I think it's also really all, and I think interesting and awesome and just fascinating to see. Now we're starting to see and maybe starting to understand why something might be happening with somebody that on the outside everything seems normal, but they don't know what's going on deeper. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes. How much have you seen an increase in mental health awareness in collegiate sports overall? But then how have you found, or have you found other universities like Rutgers that take, a lot of pride in mental health and making sure that their athletes are physically and mentally ready to play?
Yeah, I'd say college sports is definitely taking a lot of steps forward. I think we're still getting there in terms of allocating more resources financially towards that. But I think you definitely see um, it's being talked about more openly, more consistently, with much more depth and nuance than I think it had been before. And I think you're starting to see a lot of buy-in from coaches too, and a lot of other people, because they're starting to see it. Well, okay, like you want your athletes to perform well, but in order to perform well, you also have to take care of all these other things. And so I think people are starting to treat it, it's like where if you break your foot, like you're out for a month, or people really, you get treatment for that, for physical injuries. And I think mentally you're starting to see similar, like, okay, someone's really going through something, whether it's depression, anxiety, addiction, whatever it is, and it's like, that needs to be treated and taken seriously. um, and so in terms of college sports, I think you're starting to see that more. um, I lost my train of thought. I'll come back to it. But can you repeat the second part of that? I think I
Yeah,
lost it.
I was just curious if there's other, because I know when you at first told me about what Rutgers does with mental health performance and whatnot, I was very fascinated because I don't know of any other athletic department that's really not obviously emphasizing, but paying attention to it, I would say, to a degree where they have, you know what I mean? So have you
Yeah.
noticed or have you found other, whether it might be in the Big Ten or another Power Five conference or just maybe another college somewhere out there that is also emphasizing and paying attention to mental health?
Yeah. So now I'm back. There has been a recent initiative with a lot of the Power Five schools, or Power Five conferences, for like a mental health awareness launch. So um, it's amazing, coaches, student athletes, people are rallying behind that. But also, I mean, I've been really lucky at Rutgers. I'm one of 6 clinicians on staff at varying levels. So, you have people with PhDs, PsyDs, master's levels like me, interns. Um, and that's been the biggest thing. Like, I get to learn from 5 other people. And I will say that that seems to be pretty unique. Like, other schools definitely have 1 or 2 people at least. Some don't have any at lower levels, but I will say Rutgers has been great because we have such a great staff who's able to do a lot of different things and be really dynamic in the approach, and also be able to allocate resources towards mental health. So that's been something that I'm hoping to see expand amongst college programs, because if you had 600-700 student athletes, one person can't meet all of those needs. It's just not necessarily realistic. So I'm hoping that in the coming years, or I should say coming months, want it to happen sooner than later, but you're starting to see that not just at Division I and the Power Five, but at the Division IIs, the Division IIIs, like we were a part of. Because when I was there, we didn't have that as a resource. I think they just hired someone who specializes in sports psychology, working with athletes. But then again, hiring a more diverse staff as well is really important, to have that representation and people who look like the student athletes and reflect the student athlete body demographically is also really important. So a couple of changes that I'm hoping to see happen soon.
I think that we're on the very beginning of totally different era of awareness of this. And again, I think
Yeah,
that it needs to be, and I think it really starts with how a lot of professional athletes have done a wonderful job of almost being advocates, if you will. I mean, I don't even think that it's them being advocates. I think it's them finally saying, you know what, enough is enough. I am going to be that person that needs to stand up for the 85 million other people or the 100 million other people out there, whatever it might be, that don't have the amplified voice that I do. I need to do
yeah,
something about it. And I think that it really starts with them in a weird way, but then at the same time, it also starts with just everybody else being accepting of it and saying, "Hey, you know what? This is something that we can't keep ignoring." I mean, it's starting to cause a problem in our society if we continue to ignore it. Who have you felt has been, I don't want to say the hardest to convince, but maybe the not so easily convinced about mental health? Is it coaches? Is it training staff that are more physical training staff? Is it athletic directors? Is it administration? Who have you found is kind of still maybe on the fence of, I don't know about that, maybe, maybe not? Or have you felt that it's really not been hard to convince people of this?
yeah. I think for the most part, it's hard to point to one group who's the most resistant, but I'd say for the most part, it's being much more commonly accepted and acknowledged. So I feel like there has been a lot of buy-in and acknowledgement of the need for mental health, or even just performance, like just mental skills. I mean, I wish I was practicing some mental skills and performance stuff when I was playing. It probably would have helped me out. I don't know if you felt the same when you were playing when we were growing up, but I definitely could have benefited from some of that. But I think a lot of it is just, putting your money where your mouth is. So it's like we talk about it, but now it's like, okay, we really do need to allocate more resources to hiring clinicians and having different resources available to athletes. One thing that is great within the Big Ten, all the student athletes get a free subscription to the Com app. So I feel like that's a great instance of, okay, we're going to offer this free subscription to all of our student athletes, that they can use to practice, meditation or mindfulness or visualization or working on their sleep hygiene, or, whatever it is, to just ground themselves. So I think that's stuff like that. And then obviously having a team of 5 or 6 people, that takes resources as well. And that's a luxury we have at Rutgers that's not present everywhere. So I think a lot of it's just reconfiguring where we're putting money towards, and also just finding better ways to support athletes, in a lot of different ways, whether it's academically with academic support, mental health, nutrition. I mean, there's so many different things that when you're an athlete, like sometimes you miss out on that, like just life skills or job searches or applications. I mean, even resumes, like, I don't know, I felt like I was behind a little bit when it came to that stuff, and I wasn't even playing at a very high level. So just preparing you for life away from sports, I think, just starting to pour more money into that.
All right, so we're going to play a little scenario out here. You know how I love my scenarios.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
say
hear it.
that you are the king of the world, the president of the United States, whatever. You are in a very large position of power. What would
Okay.
you do to not force, but really have a massive awakening in society of, hey, this is serious. We're not joking around here. We need everybody to listen because this is very important. Mental health is a very important thing. People's mental health and mental well being are very important. What would you do? How would you go about instilling in every single Power Five conference school? There's a team like you guys that you have at Rutgers where you're able to diversify amongst 70 athletes instead of having just one person. What would you do, or how would you go about making it so that there's just, I know it's a lot to ask you, I know, but there's going to be a point in time when you're going to become the director of something and you're going to be able to say, oh wow, like I think I can go about it this way, I can go about it that way. How would you go about it to increase this awareness?
Yeah, no, I love that you're thinking like that because I think too oftentimes I definitely find myself in this boat, and I'm sure other people do as well. But it's like sort of pointing out how things are messed up and not working, and it's like sort of spending I don't know, reallocating energy and time into think like, okay, how is it going to look? Like, what would an efficient system look like? And I guess I sort of start like different approaches. Like, I think definitely, at the individual level, like people having that introspection and self-awareness and critical thinking. Because to me, like mental health is very much intertwined with social justice and intersectionality and all the different things that we see going on with different types of people from different walks of life. So I think just being able to take a step back and figure out like who you are, what's going on for yourself. I know I always think about that too, like how, like when I walk into a room, like what are the dynamics at play that could be affecting me but affecting others. So I definitely say like starting at the individual level, just taking a step back and having some compassion and empathy for yourself but also for others. And I think at the systemic level too, a lot needs to change. And that's not just with mental health. I feel like that's with a lot of different institutions. I think if anything we've learned from the last couple of years, it's that things have got to change in real ways, across the board with a lot of different institutions, and mental health being the space that I'm in, but also being in conversation. It's like mental health clinicians and psychologists and sports psychologists need to be in conversation with medical doctors and strength coaches and trainers and administrators, ads, lawyers, across the board, professors. And I think once you start to have that, I think when we all sort of come together and start rowing the boat, so to speak, in the same direction, and everybody's hopping on and getting behind it, I think that's when real change happens. So I think sort of twofold, like individually, sort of that introspection and awareness to for yourself, and then being able to contribute to a much bigger cause, because it's bigger than me, it's bigger than any one person. And also we're seeing student athletes use their platform and really bringing about a lot of change, and that's happening at all levels, not youth sports, college sports, professionals. So it's a really amazing time to be part of it. And I just feel really fortunate. I've been super privileged to be where I'm at, and had a lot of different people helping me out along the way. And so I feel like just trying to contribute to a bigger cause is it's amazing.
Oh, it's very amazing. I mean, it's I think a very impactful thing, and like you said, there are a lot of things that need to change. And I've over the last few days come up with a little analogy. Life is like a loaf of bread, right? Eventually, some things do get stale. Eventually, that bread will get moldy. So as a
Amen.
result, you need to freshen some things up, right? You need to go back to the bakery. You need to get a new loaf of bread. And I know that kind of sounds weird to say out loud, but I think that it can be directly related where there needs to be change. There's nothing that is still standing to this day that has not changed at least at some point. And the things that have not changed for so long, we are starting to see that, right? We are starting to witness that. And I think that our generation, the generation like yourself and mine, we are going to be that change where we have to come in and say, hey, you know what? Like, it's okay if somebody needs a day away from the office or whatever it might be. And being able to have other people accept that, right? Have you found at times, or I guess, no, I'm going to ask this question. Do you
Okay.
ever tell people that you might be having a conversation with, say an athlete or whomever, do you try to encourage other athletes to not necessarily be advocates, but maybe branch themselves out more and say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe I can be somebody that my teammate can talk to also." And then they kind of feel a little bit more comfortable to the point where they say, "Hey, let's go talk to Alex or whatever." Have you felt that you can reach athletes or talk to athletes to a point where they can also be voices themselves, not even on a grand scale, but just in a small scale, whether it's on their same floor in their dorm, the same apartment building, the same team, whatever it might be? Have you felt yourself or found yourself trying to maybe encourage that amongst other athletes?
Yeah, I think I try and do it, and I think, a lot of people try and do it more by modeling than by saying explicitly, like, "Hey, you should try and, go reach," because, that can be a little bit tricky, but definitely trying to model, like, just talking honestly, authentically, being genuine, about, about whatever it is that they're bringing to the table. And I think also by just being around, like going to a practice, going to a workout, going to the games, just being around, they see you, they see you going to get food or at Starbucks, or they see you around and, you give them a little fist pound, and like, you sort of normalize it. Like, it doesn't have to be this like, oh, this weird vibe, I guess. It's like, what's going on? You're wearing that, like, I'm wearing Rutgers stuff. It's like, you're sort of part of a bigger team. So I think one great thing too, like at Rutgers, it's unique. It's, when people come in, it's the same spot where they go to get an x-ray, they go to get their physical. They would see me or see another clinician, and we're all dressed, with Rutgers stuff. It's like, it's I think that helps reduce barriers and destigmatize it, because you're there for everything. No matter what it is, whether it's an X-ray physically, or you're just going through something or want support emotionally or mentally. You're going to the same space. So I think, trying to model that sort of behavior of, like, trying to advocate, and be an agent for change in that space as well. And but not necessarily something I'm explicitly saying, but just trying to model for myself, but also just being around. I think there's something to be said about being visible, because then it's like when people see you, it's like, oh, hey, what's going, like, can I talk to you about this? Like, it doesn't have to be, sitting in an office, in a dimly lit room, lying on the couch, talking about your family and your childhood. Like, I think people associate psychology and mental health with, like, it can be just passing by, hey, what's going on? Like, something quick. Like, that is a form of therapy in a way. It doesn't have to be this traditional model that I feel like is starting to be uprooted more so now. But I think that's definitely the landscape moving forward, which is great.
You said a perfect word for this, and it's normalize. And that's what needs to happen ultimately. At the end of the day, it needs to become something where kids in middle school, elementary school, high school, college, there's a general education class about this because, again, when it's affecting people in our society and when people are harming themselves because they don't feel like they have any other way out, when you say that out loud, it's alarming. It's kind
Mm.
of shocking that that is a person's um, decision or their only way out, if you will. And I think that it boils basically down to just normalization and making
Yeah.
it so, like you said, you're in the community, you're at school, you're in the lunch line, you're passing by on the quad or on campus or wherever you are, you're on your hour-long walk, which you and I talked about earlier on. You are a foundation, a point of the environment in which you are in. And as a result, people can say, you know what, I feel comfortable talking to that person, right? I feel comfortable going up to them and not, like you said, having to knock on the office door and go and prop your feet up on the couch and whatever else. It can just be something minor, or even just a text, a phone call, whatever it might be. Hey, I'm walking from building A to building B. Can you walk with me? I need you to talk to me about something because in a wild way, Alex, like I don't even think you might realize it, but you are single-handedly, and it might be in an extreme way, but you are saving people's lives. You're not on an operating room, you're not pulling something out of someone's leg or whatever. You're having to dissect something that nobody can see. That's really hard to do, right?
Yes.
And in
Yeah.
my line of work, I mean, hey, I do play by play. Imagine having to play by play something that you can't see, Okay. That's really hard to do. Okay. I can't do that. So for you being able to unpack something with someone and being able to walk them through it and kind of guide them, if you will, I mean, you're saving people's lives. You are changing people's lives just like that. And I think that the biggest thing, again, it just needs to be normalized. And I feel like that's something that you probably are grilled on and drilled on all the time in your work and what you're doing in your career. People are always talking about it needs to be normalized, it needs to be normalized. And it does. And I think that once it starts to branch out of just inside of the mental health community, and it's starting to grow even more and more and more. And like you said, before you know it, a couple months from now, it's going to be a totally different ball game. And I think that's going to allow athletes again to feel much more open to talk. And it's going to, as a result, lead them to have a lot healthier lives, being able to play better on the court, being able to have better relationships off the court, being able to get along with a teammate that, and again, you and I can both relate to this as athletes. When you're on a team, it's like working on the same office, right? You've got people
Yeah.
that you work with that you don't really like. That's the harsh reality of it. It's not that you've got a problem with the person or whatever. There's just something about them you're just not a big fan. You'd rather not deal with them, and it can
Mhm.
affect you. And so it's the same thing on a team. How can you manage? Hey, this teammate's been, how do I go up to somebody and say they have not been very nice to me? I need to say something to them without being mean, but also standing my ground, whatever it might be. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's got to be normalized. It's got to be normalized. And, for someone like me, I'm not the most outright person about my mental health. And, I think everybody does it in a different way, but I have to
Right.
be aware of it. Everybody's got to be aware of it. And I
Yeah.
hope that, this conversation that we have, it continues on off air, obviously, but we're going to have you come back on the show, my friend, because I love talking
Thank you
about
for
this
having.
with you. Of course, my friend. No, you're always welcome on.
This was
And I think,
amazing, by the way.
oh,
I
yeah.
loved like the were super insightful and on point, and like it's really great to just be able to go back and forth and talk about it. So I appreciate you giving me the space as well.
Of course. Well, that's how this is going to change, right? No matter how many people this reaches, at the end of the day, it's going to be heard by somebody, and something might click in someone's head and they might say, "Hey, you know what? They're not wrong. These two dudes talking on a Zoom meeting, they might be onto something, can't believe it, right? But it's the truth. And I think that these conversations need to happen more often because I think that's the thing is that they're not happening enough. They might be happening, but it's not enough. It needs to be more. And you and I in our own little worlds, we can make that change happen in however way that we can do it, right? And I think what you're doing is incredible. I mean, I enjoy telling people what you do because people say, "Wow, that's really cool." Like he's, changing people's lives. He's impacting people. And it's not just people that are 35 with kids and a mortgage and, all of these other stressors. These are college kids. Let's face it, Alex, we're not that far removed from that time of our lives. You and I were just talking off air. We feel like
Yeah.
it was a long time ago, but it really wasn't. It was only 2, 3 years ago that we graduated from school. So that's the other thing is being able to be, like you said, that familiar face, somebody that like you said, looks like somebody else that is going through that same problem because it makes that person feel a whole lot better. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, this isn't some guy that's 85 years old and is from a totally different time and yada, yada, yada. This is somebody that is, I'm looking at my future, but just 3 years down the road, like a very immediate future. I could totally
Yeah.
relate to this person. I mean, we might be old, but we're not that old.
Not that old. Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I will
Not
say I've
yet.
been having some lower back pain, and I was in the
Ooh,
grocery store. Yeah, dude, I was like, "What did I do?" Like, I haven't done anything physical. Like, I haven't hurt. I don't know if it's
you
just
walk
maybe I'm
right.
walking too fast. I'm sitting in the
That's
car
what
too
all
long.
the actors to get these days, right?
That's what I mean. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But I know that you've got a big game to go to very soon. I want to leave you with this question. I leave it all the time in these interviews. You might
Yeah.
know what's coming, so it's coming. When did
Okay.
you kind of realize and kind of have that epiphany where you said, this idea of being in sports and being in mental health and crossing it over, I can do that, A, and B, this is an actual literal thing. This is not just, oh, I had this idea one day when I was walking in the park. This is something that is concrete and very, very capable of happening. When did you kind of have that epiphany where you said, this is exactly what I'm meant to be doing, and this is what I'm going to be doing?
Oof. Yeah. Um, Gosh, this is tough. I mean, I think first and foremost, I've been extremely fortunate and lucky. Um, it's definitely a blessing to be able to get to where I'm at, and had so many different people, family, especially like just sort of encouraging me and pushing me along the way. But then also, other people just being willing to give me opportunities. So I knew I wanted to work in sports, but didn't know when or if that opportunity would come and how it would look. So I mean, I have to definitely thank my supervisor, my boss for for being able to offer me that opportunity, and other people sort of putting me in touch. Like it's the way the world works. We're all interconnected. But I think there's just something amazing, and like I wanted to touch on something you said, but like feeling like I'm able to have this great impact, but all the people I work with, whether it's as coworkers and other sports psychologists and coaches, but also the student athletes I'm working with who are coming to me for support. I learn a lot from them, and I think that's really been the transformative moment where it's like, wow, like this is really powerful to see someone really progress and um, go through whatever they're going through and come out on the other side. That's something that's really just it's beautiful because it shows the resilience in people, and so I learn a ton from the people I work with. So it's nice to think that I'm the one doing all the work and they're taking a lot from me. But I really gain a lot from working with other people too, and being able to be part of that with them and sort of go along on that journey with them. That's something that's always sticking with me. And you have these moments where it's like you'll finish and it's like, wow, like it does feel good to be able to help other people and feel like you're part of a bigger cause and a bigger mission. And so that's something that's really validating for me personally, and keeps me going.
Well, my friend, it shows that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And not to mention, you love it. You know,
Likewise, man. I admire you.
well, I appreciate it. I have people like yourself where I look at and I say, he's really making a big impact. I've got to keep up with that guy. I have some major competition in Alex Gamble. I need to keep doing what I'm doing because that guy is 10 years ahead of me. So you keep doing what you're doing. I love having these conversations with you where we can just chat, really. I mean, I forgot that we're on a show right now. There's
Oh, I
people.
forgot. I know.
Exactly.
That's
I forget. And people are at home sitting there thinking, this was a very important, needed conversation. And we're going to do this again. We're going to chit chat. And plus, it's another way for us to chit chat. And that's always fun.
yeah,
So, and to
yeah.
catch up and whatnot. And you need to get me one of those Rutgers jackets. I like that.
I got you. I got you.
I am a
So
big Wisco fan. I know Big Ten rival there. I am a big Wisco fan. But you know what? I'll let it slide because, obviously a great friend of
as
mine,
long
my
as you
friend.
rep
But
it.
absolutely. Oh, of course. I will totally wear it. I will wear it. I will wear it through and through. If people ask me where I got it, my buddy Alex, he works at Rutgers. He's doing
There
great
we go.
things, doing big stuff. But my friend, I know they just tipped off like 15 minutes ago, so you're you're a little late. You can blame me. Please blame me. I will take full blame for that one. But as always, my friend, great chatting with you. Stay safe, stay well, and let's chat soon. As always, my friend.
Yes, sir. It sounds good, man.